Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and another broadcast. My name is Paul. I'm a very happy member of Cocaine Anonymous and I live in Peterhead in Scotland. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Eve.
Hello everyone, my name's Eve and I'm from England.
Glad you're here, Eve. Thanks for joining us. And Ashley.
Hi Paul, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I'm Ashley. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
Glad you're here, Ashley. And Catherine.
Hi, thank you for the invite, Paul. My name's Catherine. I'm a recovered addict from Widnes in the UK.
Glad you're here. We're here to carry a message of hope, faith and courage to addicts everywhere. And, today we're going to be taking a look through our basic textbook called Alcoholics Anonymous. There's around 50 broadcasts on this channel, folks. If you're still using drugs and you're looking for a solution, we have a solution. And there's lots of podcasts on this channel. Wherever you see this video posted on Skype or in the rooms or WhatsApp or YouTube, please feel free to reach out in the conversation below. Later on in this broadcast, which you can pause and rewind at any point, there'll be information about meetings and information about literature. So I'm really pleased that you've all come along today on the channel, and we've each brought a portion of the big book that's particularly precious to us. So we're each going to share on our particular portion, and then we're each going to comment and share back, and we're going to go around. So without further ado, Eve, I'm going to mute and hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Okay, like I said, my name is Eve. I'm a recovering addict from England. I'm going to read one of my favorite parts, which is page 66 to 67 of chapter How It Works in the Big Book. So I start this down the bottom of 66 to kind of the middle of 67. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, "This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done." We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance at being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each other and everyone. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrong others have done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set those matters straight. Now, this is one of my favorite passages. The list that it's referring to is some of the step work that we do while we're going through this program. And the step 4 part of the program is where you write down any wrongs or any resentments that you hold to other people or any wrongs that you've done to other people. And for me, that was a breakthrough when I was going through this, to see writing on pen and paper and see my own handwriting and, things that I'd done to others and perceived wrongs of others to me. I found that I could let go of all that resentments, because once it's down in black and white, and then you go through your steps and you start to, we call them defects, and you start to realize what my personality defects are. I'm self-centered and I'm intolerant, and the main two that I found really afflicted me. So by doing this, it helps you to put that aside, and it helps you to enable more for my higher power to guide my thinking and my behavior and my attitude, and I can now help others. When I was in the madness of addiction, I would constantly argue with people, be aggressive towards people, say horrible things to people. But those are the people that I was being horrible to were also sick. But now with this program and being recovering, I don't feel the need to do that. It says, how can I be helpful to him? I asked my higher power to guide me. How am I going to help others? How am I going to help other addicts who are going through the same things we've all gone through? How can I reach out to them, and how can I pull you through to us, to the other side, where you can live a life of hope, faith, and courage? Because that's what we're here to do, to carry this message that you can recover, and it is better. And we can, in this book helps. You know, we avoid retaliation or argument. That is groundbreaking, because rather than flying off the handle about something, I can now take a step back. I can always say my serenity prayer and just take a step, and I don't react that knee-jerk reaction to act so aggressively or arrogantly anymore. You know, we wouldn't treat sick people that way. It makes you realize that you can't treat people in a certain way, especially when they're sick. When you have an illness like addiction, you can't be treated with detest, you know, you can't detest them. You have to reach out, and you have to help them. You know, we can't destroy our chances of being helpful by being selfish and intolerant. We need to get rid of those defects. So when I read this paragraph in the book with my sponsor, I really felt a freedom come from it. You know, we placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set those matters straight. And that's when you go through and you make your amends. And me personally, I had to apologize to friends and family for everything that I've done to them. But that set me free. It really did set me free. So I'll bring my part of the share to the end, but this for me was the absolute pinnacle of my recovery, once I'd been able to let those resentments go and I've been able to make my amends. Thank you
so much. Thanks, Eve. That was beautiful. Ashley, come on in.
Yeah, hi Paul. Thanks, Eve, for your share and the bit of the reading that you just read. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, you know, getting to that point of you know, handing it over and looking at, you know, different angles of how I can approach situations in regards to the reading that was read, you know, and looking at, you know, these, putting pen to paper and doing the inventory that's required of us when we get to that stage, and that's something that I you know, I do, and you know, try and implement that with other people, you know, coming into this. So if there's anyone new listening to this and you know, wants to get an idea of what it's all about, you know, this is, you know, from my experience, it's the process of this, you know, this normality of where we get to, of, you know, where we're not, you know, we're just at peace with everything, you know, not forgetting that, you know, the peculiar mental twists and, you know, all the stuff that goes with the addiction and things. But for me, I suppose I had to get to a place where it was just enough was enough, and just really wanting to know something different around my old thinking, I suppose. But yeah, that's a very good, you know, it's a very good portion of the book. You know, I learned a lot from that personally, and, you know, others can get that and also, you know, learn a bit from it. But yeah, I'll leave it there, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Great to hear you. Thank you. Catherine.
Hi, Catherine Addict. Thank you so much for your share there, Eve. It was really, really beautiful. What I get from that is, it's like the being humble, owning up to your mistakes and seeing what part you played in it. When we're holding on to resentments, we're just holding on to them for ourselves. We're not hurting anyone else other than ourselves. And it's like, how can I be helpful to the world, and not what can I get out of the world? And doing the work on the columns is a big eye opener. And I've shared this many times. It was like one of the best moments in my life where I was able to see my part in things, because in active addiction, I was so self-absorbed. Everything was like, well, they've done this, they've done that. and it fueled me. And as I say, the only person I continued to hurt was myself. I really like as well when it says we cannot be helpful to all people. It shows, you know, we're not perfect humans. There are going to be people that we can't be like best friends with, and it says but at least God will show us. At least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. So it's telling us that, you know, we don't have to be best friends with everyone. You know, we're still human, although we live by the 12 principles. Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful part of the book. And, you know, resentments, I've got written here in my book, with resentments block progression, which is absolutely true, isn't it? You know, we can't be at one with God when we're living in the past, in things that have happened. You know, they've happened, and we've made our amends by working the wonderful program. Yeah, and just seeing what our part is, and then turning it around and seeing what we can do to go and help someone else. It's a really beautiful way to live. And yeah, I really feel like getting humble and admitting to myself my faults, my defects is where the magic happens. I know I've written my list of defects in my big book, and it just come to me to do it. I didn't get suggested it. And when I'm having off days, which we do because, you know, we're not perfect humans, I look at that list of resentments, and that is the person I don't want to be. So turn it around, do the opposite to what my list of resentments are. It seems to be working so far. And, you know, in the book, it also says, doesn't it, when these crop up, you know, they don't just all vanish overnight. It warns us, doesn't it, when they pop up. But we've got a program how to deal with it, which is absolutely wonderful. Yeah, I know by doing this on a daily basis, it removes me from being in self-centered. Self-pity is a massive one for me. You know, all the selfishness traits of a human I can go into in the click of a finger, but I can also come out of it by making amends when I've been cranky or when I've done something wrong or dishonest. And yeah, it's like it's like directions how to live a beautiful spiritual life where you are thinking of others more than yourself. And it does work. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Catherine. Great to hear you. Yeah, it's a great bit of the book. Thank you so much, Eve, for bringing that to us. And I'm just looking at it. It's on the screen just now. You know, I think house cleaning, you know, living clean is much more than just being clean from drugs, including alcohol. You know, living clean means a clean heart. And one of the secrets to staying clean from drugs is to keep a clean heart and a clean mind. And it says there, just in the bit before you read, where the grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men and women, but for alcoholic addicts, these things are poisonous. You know, and just as there's a higher power, there's a lower power, you know, and many times you'll hear the personification of the lower power in the yang or alcoholism or the devil, and the higher power is God or spirit of the universe, creator. You know, I was working with someone today, and for them the higher power is Bhagwan Swimari. For me, it's the Lord Jesus Christ. But whatever your higher power is, most of us concede that there is a lower power. And that lower power tries to attack us while we're clean and sober as well, the alcoholic reasoning. And, you know, it can come in the form of obsessive reasoning, resentment being the number one offender, where we resend the mentality of something, resentment. We resend the mentality of something. And, you know, instead of being loving and forgiving, we can be harsh and critical of others, and that's completely wrong. You know, and it's a great bit of the book. I'm really pleased that you've mentioned it. It's interesting. It talks about the mastery of resentments, and I think it would really be a case of building that relationship with God, the higher power, you know, and getting that wisdom and serenity and courage not to have that obsessive reasoning. And the reason why it's problematic is because for a long time we concluded that getting drunk or getting loaded was a workable, viable solution, you see. Whether we were happy or sad, we live to use, used to live. An addict is someone whose whole life and thinking is centered in drugs, ways and means to get more. We live to use and we use to live, or we live to drink and we drank to live. And, you know, we don't live like that anymore. Pardon me, we keep a clean heart and a clean mind. And, you know, when we're offended, we say to ourselves, this is a sick person. How can I be helpful to them? Save me from being angry. And, you know, I don't believe God tempts us, but I believe we're tested. And I think working with others, it certainly keeps you on your toes. To seek the will of God, that's the great thing. To see what you can do for others every day, I think is a vital component of our wonderful suggestions of a face-to-face home group, an online home group, a commitment to reading a couple of pages of the literature every day, a commitment to our personal spiritual literature, a commitment to prayer morning, noon and night, a commitment to consistent step work, a commitment to good self-care, a minimum of 2 substantial conversations every day with folks in recovery. Everyone that I've seen take those simple suggestions has stayed clean. So look, that's enough out of me. Without further ado, we'll keep things moving on to the next topic. And Ashley's got something from the big book that he's going to read and then share for 2 or 3 minutes on. Over to you, Ashley.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, I'm Ashley. I'm a recovered drug addict. Yeah, I would like to pick out a vision for you. Yeah, so, you know, welcome, you know, to anyone that's listening or anyone that's new, that's, you know, wondering what the fellowship's about, or, you know, wants to get a bit of an insight on you know, on some stuff around the 12 steps and addiction. So yeah, I'll start the vision for you. So yeah, Ashley, recovered drug addict. For most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colourful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. But not so with us. In those last days of heavy drinking, the old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. They were instant yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and that heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself, as we become subjects of King Alcohol and the shivering denizens of this mad realm, and the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out our sordid places, hoping to find an understanding, companionship and approval. Momentarily, would come the oblivion and that awful awakening to face the hideous 4 horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will not understand. So yeah, I'll just briefly share on what I've just read. You know, for me, you know, coming into the fellowship and you know, as a newcomer and wanting to, you know, understand what it is that keeps happening to me. You know, when I was presented with this, you know, with this chapter, and, you know, getting more of an understanding of what actually goes on for me, you know, in regards to this, you know, in regards to this like insane idea that, you know, it just keeps happening. And I personally, I wanted to stop. I didn't want to, you know, continue doing it. You know, and that obsession just wouldn't leave me alone. And it was just, you know, something that I didn't want to do, but yet I got into a place where this thought, or this, you know, this idea that using would be all right. And like it says, where I read, you know, the less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society. And that's, you know, that's really what I wanted to do. I suppose not what I wanted to do, but that's just what happened to me when I used. I didn't want to be a part of society, or, you know, a part of the normality of, you know, the normal kind of ordinary person that can deal with life, you know, in the normal sense. So that, you know, for me, it was about this idea that I really haven't got any kind of control over it, and I can't stop it. But then reading, you know, coming into the fellowship, and I, you know, I think I've shared it on other platforms, but, you know, I really had to get to a place where I suppose I was beaten, smashed, whatever, you know, whatever you want to call it, and becoming more receptive, and you know, more of a becoming more getting to an understanding of what it is that goes on for me, and letting whatever I've got going on, that I think that I can have some kind of, you know, control over it, is I had to kind of let that go, and just look at, you know, what's on offer within this Cocaine Anonymous and the 12-step fellowship. And I suppose once I got into that situation of being receptive, and you know, and finally surrendered around this, you know, this stuff, and just really kind of, you know, putting my, you know, because, you know, anything that I want to do is just self-destruct, and you have to, you know, I got to a place working through the steps. I you know, it wasn't, you know, it was an amazing experience, and just that part of handing it over and not really thinking that I have this under control, because I suppose anything that I've got anything, you know, anything that I think that I've got any control of with addiction has just failed me so many times. And like I said, I was just handing it over, and I got, you know, everyone's journey is different, but I got into a place of just not really thinking of, you know, I've got to do all these things to, you know, once I'm in recovery, and just letting it, you know, it takes a long while, and I'm still learning now, and this is the beauty of it, but it just letting things happen, and, you know, letting the program, you know, kind of work you, and just letting these, you know, it's a natural process, and that, you know, that wanting to do this, because, you know, I wanted to do this, and you know, today I have some accountability for what I do and what I say, and, you know, what times I should, you know, stick to, and before that wasn't the case, and this is what this gives you. I you know, this is what I'm convinced of. It gives you this, you know, this clear perception of life, once you're at that stage where you want this for yourself, not for, you know, your family or your friends, or, you know, you've got to want it for yourself, and get to that point where you just cannot, you know, carry on the way that you're carrying on. And that's just been my experience, that I just wanted to do something different around alcohol and drugs, and, you know, this seems to be the deal, to be honest. So, you know, if there's any newcomers listening, you know, I'd strongly suggest getting a sponsor and, you know, go through the chapters and see what you, you know, see what you relate to, and see if you can match your experience within the book. But yeah, I'll leave it there, Paul. Thank you.
Good stuff, Ashley. Thanks for sharing. Catherine.
Thank you, Ashley. Wow, that is so, this part of the book, even though it's at the end after all the work, it means so much to me. When I relapsed, I phoned a friend out at the fellowship. She said, get to a meeting. I was like, I can't face it. She said, get to the meeting. And we just sat. It ended up a really small meeting, and we sat down. I broke down. I was like, I cannot carry on anymore. I can't do it. And wherever we was up to in the big book, she said, right, we're reading a vision for you. And the words just, you know, them 2 paragraphs, it just explains the absolute despair, hopelessness, awfulness that I was feeling that day. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where I was going. I'd even lost the fight and the will to want to end my life. It was that bad. I just didn't exist. And you know, her reading this to me and giving me a hug made so much difference. Oh, there's so much in them 2 paragraphs. The always one more attempt and one more failure, you know, says it all, doesn't it? You know, every attempt to try and fix yourself externally with drugs, with alcohol, it will fail. It really will fail. Withdrew from society. I apart from like when I was in recovery, most of the last like 7 years, it's just been me in 4 walls. And even if I was in a room full of people, I'd still be in this like cell of my mind. You know, the loneliness was absolutely awful. The chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. And you know what? I like visualize. It's took me back to that relapse, and it's quite you know, the lights do go out. It might be light outside, but it's that dark in my head. I can't see anything. And, you know, it doesn't have to be like that. You know, the 4 horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. And, you know, for anyone who's feeling these things at the moment, I cannot suggest strongly enough to get involved in CA. You know, get a sponsor, work through the big book, do your steps, be honest with yourself, and honest with a sponsor who's just someone who's recovered from alcohol or you know, drug addiction, and connect with people. Had I not made friends in the fellowship and was able to reach out that day, I don't know if I would have made it back. You know, people in the rooms understand us. You know, they know, you know, we all suffer with the illness of addiction. They know how you feel. You know, our brains are different. And yeah, oh, it's just brought back memories. I'm really happy because I made it back, and I know unfortunately people don't. But I truly believe that day, you know, if I hadn't have connected, I don't know what would have happened. Because I was saying, should I drive to hospital? What should I do? I do not know what to do. And you know what? That day, going that meeting and that beautiful lady sitting down and reading that has absolutely saved my life. And yeah, I'm so grateful to CA. So if anyone is struggling, just give it a go. You will never look back. I promise. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks so much, Catherine. It's a great bit of the book, Ashley, and it's got me thinking. You know, it talks there about conviviality, companionship, and colourful imagination. you know, and for many persons, when they start out, their using and boozing career is great fun. Our partners are there, we've got money in the bank, a car, perhaps a motorcycle, a dog, you know, a home, a big stereo, and it's party on. We've got our health and our sanity, perhaps our jobs. But for many of us, we end up on our own with the curtains closed, the doors locked, paranoid about any kind of noise, with ever increasing consequences, unable to face the reality of consequences, unable to find a solution for the consequences. And the only solution we have is a delusional suicide on the installment plan known as active addiction. And so then we realize that the solution we had for ourselves and for experience and feelings was a solution that was slowly killing us, preceded by months and years of carnage, catastrophe and chaos for those around us as well as ourselves. And then we need a real solution, you know, and that's where the 12 steps of recovery come in, you know, a daily program of action and working with others and staying connected. You know, but it's been my experience as well that many folks, that is exactly you know, what happens to them. It's all fun at the beginning, but the consequences build up, you know. And you know, I was talking to a dear member today about this very issue, about how you know, the reality is that we were locked in a cycle of living, choosing to live, self-medicating, and when we're in an altered state, the consequences didn't seem to matter that much. But when it wears off, the consequences rarely, if ever, got better, and very often incrementally, albeit, got worse. And then the old solution was there again. We'll get high or get drunk, and the consequences just ever worsened, you know. And we would wake up with these 4 horsemen of terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. So it is a great bit of the book, and I'm really thankful that you brought that, Ashley. You know, and you know, I maintain that step 1, when worked properly, is the most difficult step. I can understand why in Narcotics Anonymous they spend over 4 weeks on step 1. I also understand what folks mean when they say, well, coming to a meeting is step 1. But for me, to work step 1 properly is at least a couple of hours of a job with a sponsor, and at least a couple of hours of personal study and pen to paper. I think it's very important to get honest around consequences, you know, to get honourable with yourself about the reality of active addiction and where it takes us. But anyway, that's enough out of me. Over to you, Eve.
Thank you. Yeah, I love this. These 2 paragraphs epitomise what it's like really to be an addict. You know, from my personal experience, started drinking from a young age. Just love going out with my mates, partying, getting absolutely off my face. And it was great when it was good. It was good, you know, until the old, you know, the old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. Well, no, we can't, because when you become utterly transformed into this madness, you don't enjoy it anymore. You're just doing it, not because you want to anymore, you just need to. Your brain and your body can't seem to function without it. And it makes me really emotional reading this bit, because it just brings back all that absolute exhaustion and that it is utter despair in my life, the darkest of dark times. But my sponsor gave me some absolutely incredible advice, which anyone can do. You don't, you know, necessarily have to be going through the steps to do it. But she said to me, what I want you to do is sit down, get a pad of paper and a pen. Don't type it out. You need to write it down in your handwriting and think about what you're going to write. Sit down and write all your feelings and any words that come to mind when you're in the pits of despair on a come down. After you've been on a binge, how do you feel? And I wrote it down on a piece of paper, all these words, you know, that it takes, when even now, if I have, you know, an intrusive thought to maybe pick up just one drink or something, I get it out and I read it, because it takes me back to that point of my life where I didn't even want to be alive anymore. You know, it was just horrendous. And if there is anybody listening to this who is going through that at the moment, and you're listening to this to see what we're about. Write down how you're feeling, and then it helps you to remember why you never want to go back there, and you don't want to do that because those old pleasures are gone. You are never going to feel again like you did the first time you ever picked up a drink or a drug. Those days are gone, and there is a way to survive. There's a way to live a life, a full, complete, happy life without any of that. We've managed that. We can do it. You can do it too if you just would like to give it a go. Come and have a look to see what the fellowship's about. There's no reason to be hunted by those 4 horsemen anymore. You can get armor against it. You'll have people, fellows that you will get on with and you will connect with. You'll hear them in a meeting or something, and you will make friends, and those friends will be friendships for life if you engage and you come. But it says unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. And if this reaches out to you, I really, as Catherine said, I implore you, please reach out to us, because we can help. You can recover. It doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be, king alcohol or whatever drug of your mad realm. Come live a life full of real hope, faith, and courage. More importantly, live a life. I always say this program gave me back my life, but it gave me something I could never imagine beyond my wildest dreams of having a life. And I'll leave it there, because this does make me a bit emotional, because it just takes you back. But thank you, Ashley, because that's an absolutely amazing part of the book.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing, Eve. Catherine's got a portion out of the big book, and then she's going to share for a couple of minutes on it. Come on in.
Hi, yes, Catherine, recovered addict. So I'm going to read from We Agnostics, and it's page 50. So here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. They flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude towards that power, and to do certain simple things, there has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. In the face of collapse and despair, in the face of total failure of their human resources, they found that a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. This happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they showed the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. Living aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them when many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives. They present a powerful reason why one should have faith. So it kind of ties in with the last reading, actually. When I went through this after a relapse, that paragraph just shouted out at me, and it's you just need to believe in that power greater than yourself, and have a simple attitude towards that power. I found when I fully surrendered to the fact that I can't do this, I can't run the show. I've been doing this for a couple of decades and it's not working. Why not try something different? It's so beautiful. I get really emotional. And there's been a revolutionary change in my way of living and my way of thinking. I'm just not the person that I was in addiction. Like said earlier, it's all about how I can contribute to the world. How can I make even just one person's day a little bit brighter? How I can show up as me. Before doing all this work, I couldn't bear being in my own skin. I was full of resentment, but more so full of fear. And I was terrified. And, you know, going through the simple program, because it is a really simple program, it does require a lot of action, but it's dead easy to understand. And, you know, underlying reasons why I was making a heavy going of life, you know, my step 4 and step 5, that dealt with that. Leaving aside the drink. So, you know, it wasn't for me, it was like cocaine that was my main problem. So putting that aside, because that was just a symptom. Coming into the fellowship, I thought that was the problem, and my word, it was a problem. The consequences were so severe, but it wasn't the root problem. I had to find out my true inner self, what it was that was blocking me from being able to live a life. And the program, you know, unfolded all that. It's an absolute miracle how it works. You know, the change came over them. Hundreds of people were able to say that the consciousness of God is today the most important fact in their life. I would never admit to that because I was still in myself. I was still in Catherine's ego. But now, you know, by letting this God, that for me personally, this, you know, God's it within me. When everything's good internally for me, everything outside reflects back good. You know, my thoughts, if I give power to negative thoughts in my head, and that when I'm in self-will, I will do that. I will give power to these thoughts that turn into actions, that turn into a reality. But when I'm like God conscious and living that way of life, you know, I can let these thoughts go. Thoughts come and go. They're just thoughts. And it says, doesn't it? So many people have recovered by having a God in their life. You know, why we should have faith, because it works. It's worked for so many people. And I really hope if this message, you know, if someone's a bit worried about the God word, you know, it's just a power greater than yourself. Like I said, my power was chaotic. My power was awful. But God's power is beautiful, it's kind, it's loving, it's nurturing. And I'm finding that my outside world is reflecting back. I was terrible for seeking externally to fix myself internally. It never happened, you know. I've been in psychiatric units, and the you know, the chaos and the severity of my using was awful. It was so like, it was affecting so many people. And it's not like that now. Like my mum, God bless her, she like says she's proud of me now, and that is all I've ever wanted. She says she loves me. It's all I've ever wanted, and this program has brought that to me. Yeah. So as I said before, if you're on the edge and you're thinking, shouldn't I, just give it a go. You won't lose by giving it a go. I promise you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, Catherine. A beautiful bit of the book. Thanks for your share as well. Yeah, I think for many persons that come in, you know, using the group as a higher power works very well in the first instance. You know, in my experience, a lot of persons that come into the rooms are very confused about the Creator, very confused about God, and just generally very confused. You know, and the gate is a welcoming gate to everybody. You know what I mean? Anyone can get and stay clean here, whatever they believe. You know, we're not a synagogue or a church or a mosque. We're about alcoholism, the problem, and recovery, the solution. Having said that, we do talk about God a lot, and it's clear from the steps it's talking about God, the Creator. You know, Tradition 2, for example, says, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. And the idea of accountability, I think, is a central feature of these steps, the idea that we're accountable to somebody. I think it's a huge issue. I think in step one, we become accountable to ourselves and to God. We get honest and transparent about the consequences, and that's a very empowering thing, because if we pick up again, we make that choice to pick up drugs again, then we're being dishonest about the reality of our consequences. And I think through this process, we experience ego deflation, and a measure of emotional maturity comes in that we call sobriety, which is much more than simply being physically sober from drinking drugs. It says there, take a certain attitude towards that power, and I'm going to have to ask us all to just spend a couple of minutes sharing back going forward, because we're kind of we've still got 10 minutes or so yet, but just to let everybody know if we could do that. And I'm going to wrap it up in a moment with these last couple of thoughts for my part. The idea is a divine resource. It says, in the face of the total failure of human resources, they found a new power, peace, and happiness and direction flowed into them. They wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements, and I mentioned them earlier. Consistent step work, commitment to literature, home groups, working with others, substantial conversations about recovery every day, accountability, prayer, meditation, inventory, these things. It's a wonderful thing. And it says there, once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, we do find purpose, connection, expression, through this program. And I think I'll just leave it there and pass it over to you, Eve.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you, Catherine. I do this. I adore this part. Well, I adore all the book, but these passages tonight have really been really hard-hitting ones. When because at first, of course, I struggled with believing in a higher power greater than myself. Because as far as I was concerned, God had never, a higher power had never done anything for me in my life. Why was I where I was? Why was I an addict? Just completely off my head all the time. What had I done to deserve that? That was my view on it. And I sat down and had a conversation with my mom, and my mom just said, pretty bluntly, well, if you because I always used to say I don't believe in God. So my mom turned around and was like, well, you say you don't believe in God, so how can you blame something you don't believe in for all the problems you've had in your life? And how about instead of blaming something, you turn that around and you start trusting in it instead? And that was just like a big kind of like, what? God, okay, right, I suppose you've got a point moment. And because of what she said to me, that inspired me more. And it says here, in the face of collapse and despair, in the face of total failure of their human resources, they found a new power, peace, happiness, and a sense of direction flowed into them. And that is exactly what happened to me as soon as I decided to, for me, it was almost like a switch being hit in my head. That moment I was sat with my mom and I decided to go, okay. And I truly prayed for the first time really ever. I'm not praying, let me get more drugs, let me get, not praying for selfish means and things. I just prayed that I could feel their presence. If you're really there, can you just let me feel that? Are you there? And I just had this so surreal sense of calm just come over me. It was insane. It doesn't sound real, but it was. And after that, ever since I had that moment and everything clicked with this program and I worked at it, but ever since I had that first sense of calmness just seep into me, I've had the compulsion to use and to drink lifted. Sometimes my brain tries to convince me it would be a good idea to go and get a bottle of wine because, like, Catherine said, we're not perfect and we still have really bad days. But because of the help of this fellowship, I won't do that. I had a struggle. I've had a couple of times where I've kind of almost frightened myself, but rather than letting that intrusive thought win, instead now I can help. I can reach out and I get help from a higher power and the fellowship. It's like Paul said earlier as well about your higher power. They kind of, they can seem to test you sometimes, but without those dark moments still, we might forget that we are addicts. And without having those intrusive thoughts, what happens if you forget and you think you're okay and you can just have that one drink? You're straight back out there. So I believe we need those kind of moments of weakness to teach us to pray, to reach out to a higher power, to teach us to reach out when we need to. We need to be taught to understand triggers. We need to be taught, that we need to make sure that we're keeping track of our behavior and our actions. And those little tests come along once in a while to properly keep you on the right track. And if you can let go and let your higher power just take control, oh my God, my life is so smooth now. It's not a fight every day. I am not battling with exhaustion and horror and just conflict all the time, because I just hand it over and I say, here you go. This happened. This is my part in it. And now I'm going to hand it over to you, God. Here you go. And he takes that from me every night. And I don't carry stuff into the next day. But I'll leave it there. But if anyone is struggling with God or anything else, feel free to reach out to us. There are a lot of people in here who know a lot about it, and they will be able to help.
Excellent stuff. Thank you. Ashley, would you like to come in for a minute or two on this passage that's on the screen?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Catherine, for reading that part of the book. Yeah, I'm a recovered drug addict. Coming into the rooms and getting into this part of the book and, getting, as a newcomer, getting into an understanding of what it's about that they're speaking about. And, for me, where it says, at the top, here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. They flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude towards that power and to do certain simple things, there has been a revolutionary change in the way of living and thinking. And I think that's been my experience, that I've got out of alcoholism, addiction, and going through the steps of and tapped into this, this power, that can restore that thinking and that deluded way of being as a person to some kind of normality around questioning the first one. And that was never possible. I could never imagine that would be possible for me to do going forward. But, putting some, like it says, to take a certain attitude, and that certain attitude was just to be, honest and to have that, to be on point with all of this, not to if you for me, if I really wanted to get to do something, it's doing it. It's that, putting something into play and actually doing it. And that's that's what's on offer here is just to put some action in around the things that I wasn't doing. And having that ability to be restored to sanity, over that thought of using. And that's the beauty of this. I can't, it's not to be messed about with, I don't think, because for me, thoughts always come and go. It's natural, I suppose, but especially around that thought of using substances, and to have some kind of normality and to be restored around that is cool, and if there's a newcomer or anyone listening to this that's struggling, this is potentially where we can get to, and we can now just carry this on to people that struggle. But yeah, I'll leave it there, Paul. Thank you.
Good stuff, Ashley. Thanks so much for sharing. So I'm going to read a bit from page 10 of Bill's story. So it's this bit here. It's on the screen. It's quite a long reading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it and then share very, very briefly, and then invite everyone to spend a maximum of 2 minutes each to share on it. So I'd always believed in a power greater than myself. I'd often pondered these things. I was not an atheist. Few people really are. So that means blind faith in the strange idea that this universe originated in a cipher and aimlessly rushes nowhere. My intellectual heroes, the chemists, the astronomers, even the evolutionists, suggested vast laws and forces at work. Despite contrary indications, I had little doubt that a mighty purpose and rhythm underlay all. How could there be so much of precise and immutable law and no intelligence? I simply had to believe in a spirit of the universe who knew neither time nor limitation. But that was as far as I'd gone. With ministers and the world religions, I parted right there. When they talked of a God personal to me, who was love, superhuman strength and direction, I became irritated and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. To Christ, I conceded the certainty of a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. His moral teaching most excellent. For myself, I had adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded. The wars which had been fought, the burnings and chicanery that religious disputes had facilitated made me sick. I honestly doubted whether, on balance, the religions of mankind had done any good at all. Judging from what I'd seen in Europe and since, the power of God in human affairs was negligible. The brotherhood of man a grim jest. If there was a Devile, he seemed to be the boss universal, the wily, vile Devile. He seemed to be the boss universal, and he certainly had me. But my friend sat before me and he made the point-blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he'd admitted complete defeat. Then he had, in effect, been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from the scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he'd ever known. Had this power originated in him? Obviously it had not. There'd been no more power in him than there was in me at that minute, and this was none at all. That floored me. It began to look as though religious peoples were right after all. Here was something at work in a human heart which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. Never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across this Zoom room. Eve, Catherine, and Ashley. And they shout glad tidings. Glad tidings of joy and peace and gladness that any addict can quit using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. Glad tidings of joy and peace and freedom and well-being. Is it easy? Not necessarily. Does it always feel wonderful? No. Is it doable? Yes. Anyone can lose that desire to use and find a new way to live. And that has been my experience. I personally know men and women that were living homeless, injecting drugs, living out of the spoon and the pipe every day, many times a day for years, for decades, that are free today. I have a brother and sister in mind right now that have now got over 2 years each of continuous sobriety. They're in a terrible, terrible state. I've been privileged to know many, many miracles, who've managed to get long-term sobriety one day at a time. And I'll just leave it there. And now we could go around and take a minute or two, and I'll just ping you a message if we're going over for time. So let me see who is next. Eve.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, this is such an important part of the book, Bill's story, because really it's our story. It's all of our story. there's not one person in CA who hasn't read this and thought, God, that's me. Oh, you know, and it all comes back. But where he says in here, but my friend sat before me and he made the point blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. Now, I've got that underlined there because without my higher power's help, I'd still be a mess. Because now I don't live within my own will. I can hand things over. I don't have to be in control. Eve's world is a bad, silly little world. But now I have opened a possibility to a higher power. And, you know, had this a power originated in him, well, in me, no, because otherwise I wouldn't have been doing what I was doing. But one of my favorite lines in this whole book is just on the next page, on page 12, where it says, my friend suggested that when that then seemed a novel idea, he said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? And to me, that's one of the most important lines in this book, because for any newcomers that might be listening, you don't have to believe in a God that someone else believes in. You can make your own conception of what you want your God to be, as long as you can believe in a higher power with all your heart. And if you feel their presence, which you will do, then that's all you need. And I'll leave it there because I'm conscious of time, so others can come in to share back.
Ashley.
Yeah, cheers, Paul. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for reading. Yeah, Ashley, recovered drug addict. Yeah, you know, I think the bit that stuck out for me was that where it says, you know, if there was a devil, he seemed the boss universal, and he certainly had me. But my friend sat before me, and he made the point blank declaration that God had done for me what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable, and you know, my experience around that is that, you know, a lot, you know, in the addiction mindset, it is just a bedevilment of self-destruct, you know, torturing and terrorizing people around this. But where it turns it all around, and you can make this, you know, this positive movement around this stuff is, you know, where it said that, you know, but my friend sat before me and he'd made the point blank declaration that God had done for me what he could not do for himself. And I think going forward, this is what, you know, we're all trying to get well in the 12 steps, and, you know, we're all trying to reach the same goal. So, you know, if there is any newcomers that are listening to this and, you know, wanting some insight on some information around this stuff, you know, get yourself a sponsor, and you know, just have that willingness to have a better life and to make others, you know, get well as well. But yeah, I'll leave it there, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Catherine.
Yeah, thank you for reading that part. And it's the same paragraph that absolutely jumps out to me. You know, society was about to lock him up. I got locked up. I was that insane. I actually had to get locked up away from society. It was horrific. And he had admitted complete defeat. And you know what? That's your step one. When you can't get my words out. When you admit complete defeat, that you can't do this anymore, is when, I think it's earlier in the book, it talks about from darkness to dawn. And that's how I felt. My world gradually got lighter and lighter. I wasn't carrying around the wreckage of my past. Raised from the dead. I truly believe I have been raised from the dead. You know, the addict Catherine was a dead person, just walking around, just existing. You know, through working these steps, I have come alive. And you know what? I'm living the best life I could ever have imagined for myself. You know, when I go back to what I wanted when I was a little girl, I've got now. And I am so grateful to CA to my sponsor, to my friends in the fellowship, and to God for raising me from the dead and giving me the life I've got today. And it's absolutely beautiful way of living. So just please, if you're struggling, please just give it a go. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Catherine, and thanks to you too, Ashley and Eve. It's been a pleasure being here with you this evening. So we've come to the end of today's podcast, family. Stay strong, stay connected. It is possible to lose the desire to use and find a new way to live. On the screen at the moment, I've got a meetings list. We strongly suggest that you find yourself a face-to-face home group if possible, and an online home group. A home group is a meeting you attend regularly, get to know the folks there, and you can perhaps do service there. On the screen right now, all the ones in blue are on every single day. So if you, and everyone's welcome at any of the Zoom meetings, whatsoever country you reside in. But these are all UK times. If you look at the top left underneath the pink box, the Breakfast Club is on every morning at 7:30. Great Gratitude 9:30. Pop-up Recovery 10:30. We Can Recover is a meeting where Eve and Ashley and I often attend, and Catherine, 2 p.m, 8 p.m, and 9:30 every day. And then Daily Reprieve at the top right is also on at 9:30, reaching out over in the middle of the far right column. Reaching out is on every night at 11, to Zana every night at midnight. So there's lots and lots of meetings, stay connected. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the three of you for coming along. It's really been a pleasure listening to you. So thanks, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thanks for the opportunity. And yeah, it's been brilliant. Thank you.
Top man. Thanks, Catherine.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to do this.
Brilliant. And Eve, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and for letting me be a part of this and just giving some service back to this amazing fellowship that saved my life.
Brilliant. Okay, family, stay safe, stay strong, stay in the solution, and check out the other broadcasts on all the steps, the entire psychic change, the spiritual malady, the ABCs of addiction. We've got about 14 personal stories on this channel, so stay connected. Until next time, bye-bye.